Okay, so yet another video which I really wasn't expecting to make in 2023 is obviously we've lost Ken Block as well. Very famous X Games skateboarder, rally driver, rallycross driver, motocross rider. Ken Block, one of the most talented individuals on 2 or 4 wheels with or without an engine. Um, if you wear DC shoes, he sets up the company as a partner. If you drink your Monster Energy drinks, he's an investor in Monster Energy drinks and, of course, personal sponsor of his. And if you see the Hoonigan label on any Ford vehicle, that doesn't happen without Ken Block. If you are a fan of skateboarding and the X Games, the development of the X Games partly due to Ken Block, and of course, cannot be understated the growth of rallying and rallycross in the USA because of Ken Block. Now, I'm not going to look at all his career statistics because, we could be here for a very, very long time. But the impact Ken Block has had as a trailblazer, as a very multi-talented individual, and you cannot understate, very similar to my video on Gianluca Violi, his affability with fans, his down-to-earth nature with fans, the time he took to answer questions and listen to what fans like about the said sports, the questions of new fans to rallying rallycross in the US he would sit down and discuss the finer techniques of car control. Motocross has got a big following with the AMA Motocross in the US. It's a fantastic championship, same as Supercross, fantastic. The AMA Motocross and Supercross, is a big following there. Rallying and rallycross, however, until Ken Block comes along in the US, very few motorsport fans in the US had even heard of rallycross and rallying. It wasn't on their radar because in the USA it's NASCAR, it's IndyCar. You might get maybe the IMSA Sports Car Championship with the endurance racing and a bit of like that Le Mans heritage with the Ford GT40 versus Ferrari kind of thing. F1 has had periods of growth and decline in the US, but rallying, rallycross, American fans until Ken Block comes along don't quite fully understand. With us Europeans and Australians and New Zealanders taking a family saloon or a family hatchback, making some modifications, like a skid pan, brakes and suspension, and two blokes, a driver and a co-driver, taking your average family saloon or hatchback, as we'll call it, or sportback as they would call it, raring round the woods in Scandinavia or country lanes in the UK or Ireland, and trying to avoid hitting a tree or rolling the bloody thing. We have an affinity in Europe for buying cars, modifying them, and taking them for a jolly ride round the woods. It wasn't on the American consciousness. Ken Block comes along, and the growth of rallying and rallycross across the Atlantic in North America is down to this guy. The Hoonigan team, privateer team, the connection with Ford, without Ken Block doesn't happen. The rise of Monster Energy, big driving force, Ken Block. So if you drink Monster Energy drinks, and you see that connection with Ken Block with his personal sponsorship, and the rise in that sponsorship of the Hoonigan team or other forms of motorsport, Ken Block's a driving force behind that. If you are a skateboarder and you wear DC shoes, Ken Block's the co-founder of DC Shoes and all the skateboarding apparel that comes with it. Massive impact culturally, and a trailblazer. You give him 2 or 4 wheels, or even a snowmobile, or anything with an engine, even a skateboard where you are the engine, you power the skateboard, you power the BMX. 2 or 4 wheels, he does things that leave you in awe, stunned by his ability. Now, yes, when he enters the World Rally Championship, he enters as a privateer, limited factory support from Ford because they have their own factory set up, and Americans are like, what? We have a guy in a world championship in a sport we're not. What is this sport? And now Americans are looking at clips on the internet of rallying. They're understanding the sport, rallycross as well. Again, they're watching us Europeans and Australians, take, as I say, family cars with modifications. Initially, back in the day, which is what rallying is, and even now, F Cup rallying now, you can turn up in a second-hand car with the appropriate roll cage and skid pan and suspension and wheel modifications and a turbo, or whatever, and just enter as a privateer, as an amateur, or as a professional, and take it for a spin around the woods in Finland, or the Ardennes in Belgium, or some country lanes in Ireland, or the UK, and Rallying is an inherently dangerous, well, probably the most dangerous motorsport. Rallycross is also pretty dangerous as well. You look at some of the accidents, and you're left stunned that these guys are walking out of the cars. Back in the day, they wouldn't walk out of the cars. It is another level of motorsport. Ken Block, he likes that adrenaline rush. But what he's done for the sport in the US, it cannot be underestimated. And then, of course, the X Games. So if you like your skateboarding, your BMXing, your snowboarding, he's a big part of the growth of the X Games in the 90s and the 2000s alongside Tony Hawk. So if you play the Tony Hawk video games or you play Forza Motorsport, these two guys, Tony Hawk, Ken Block, are the big driving force behind the X Games that we see today. Obviously, they were at the first ever X Games. And again, that cultural impact upon younger people, such as myself, growing up watching the X Games, growing up, watching, World Rally Championship, Rallycross. It is a very niche market in the US. It isn't anymore. A lot of people my age and younger in the US are now watching rallying, understanding rallying because of Ken Block. And then when you see the footage of him engaging with fans, taking them out in the drift car, taking them out in the rally car or a touring car for a spin around a track or around a rally stage or on a drag strip, it's something about his character. Very down to earth, very approachable, dry, witty humour. And he has a lot of time to answer fans' questions, especially new fans to rallying and rallycross, about the technical aspects of the vehicles, what it's like to drive a World Rally stage with a co-driver in your ear, saying brake here, sixth gear here, over crest, we've got a jump, we've got a blind bend, you've got some S-bends, you've got trees, you may have a cliff there. The technical aspect of it that casual fans wouldn't know. So, well, I could have done his career statistics and all the disciplines he competed in, from skateboarding, motocross, supercross, rallying, rallycross. It's just what he's done, the impact he has had upon a generation of sports fans, especially motorsports fans, not only here in Europe and Australia and New Zealand, but in the US especially, in a sport that didn't have an imprint, because in the US it's NASCAR, it's IndyCar, maybe IMSA sports car racing. Rallying and rallycross, until Ken Block comes along, doesn't really reach the American consciousness. It does now. So that is a lasting legacy impact, is the growth upon rallying and rallycross in the US. The X Games has had a growing cultural impact amongst younger people globally. Again, Ken Block. And if you wear your DC shoes, which I have done in the past, Ken Block, he set up that company. If you know anything about the Hoonigan race team, which has that affinity with Ford, Ken Block, and Monster Energy drinks would not have had the massive growth it's had over the last 20 years without Ken Block and his involvement with the X Games, his involvement in the World Rally Championship with the Privateer Hoonigan Ford team, which has seen massive growth. And that is his cultural legacy. That is his legacy in sport, is he's grown a much bigger fan base. Not just Ken Block fans, but fans in general of these sports that wouldn't have, been on their radar until he comes along. So there you go. That's a look at the impact, the cultural impact, and the career of Ken Block. It is a very sad loss that we have lost him, and it is a very tragic accident that has taken him. And this is a reminder that even though he was doing it on his own private land, that the sports that he was involved in are so inherently dangerous. Yet the adrenaline is what makes the fans and the sport, and the drivers and the riders of, it is that is, you've got to be, another level of commitment. You can't go in half-hearted as a rally driver. You can't go in half-hearted as a motocross racer. You can't go half-hearted as a snowmobile racer. He tried his hand at multiple forms of motorsport and those extreme BMXing and skateboarding. That legacy cannot be undone. Fantastic role model and a fantastic human being. So there you go. There's a look at Ken Block. Thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts in the comments section below, and I'll have some more content for you very, very soon.